I'm Ben, and welcome to the space that I review things. I'll take a look at a product, person, process, or system, and not just ask what and how, but also why and how could it be improved. Today, I'm reviewing pet insurance. So earlier in the year, my wife and I got our puppy, Peanut. Here she is. Isn't she adorable? Now I was 50-50 at just making this entire thing, just me holding Peanut and not even talking. But bad news for you. Pet insurance has reason to get me fired up, and it should do for you too. So when we first got Peanut, earlier on in the year, she was only 8 weeks old. And we purchased pet insurance for her because you just never know. And while I'll mostly review the pet insurance industry as a whole, I'll also take a look at that specific brand we went with and how they performed when put in practice with my own experience. So we first went and looked at all the providers out there, all the different options, and it seemed like there was a wide range. Whole heap of names you're probably familiar with, like Bupa, Medibank, Australia Post, Velocity, Woolworths, Real Insurance. The usual go-to companies for insurance, whether pet or not. But when we take a look at these comparisons of the offerings side by side, it feels like all of them are really more or less a dead ringer of each other with maybe a bit of a haircut or a mustache. So they all have around 80%, give or take, of vet bills reimbursed, between 10 to 15k annual benefit based on how much you pay. They all make you fill out a detailed quote request form as well. It's almost as if each pet insurance provider is doing the same sort of thing with the same product. And there's a reason for that. See, they're also similar in their offering because most of the Australian pet insurance industry, all those names I mentioned before included, they're all actually provided by a company called PetSure. In some cases, there's even several layers, but it all still comes back to PetSure. For example, Budget Direct. Their pet insurance isn't quite as direct as their name suggests. It's provided by RSPCA Insurance, which is provided by PetSure. From a service perspective though, does it matter? Yes, it absolutely does. Because these companies, if you walk into a store and ask about pet insurance, or if you have a pet insurance query after talking about your human insurance, well, they can't even help you because it's not their product, it's PetSure's. Essentially, they slap their name on someone else's policy with a few tweaks here and there and present it to you in their own letterhead with a slightly different markup. So when I went into a Bupa store to query a claim I submitted, the staff told me that they couldn't assist and told me to go online or call the call centre. What a great value add that product is. For a consumer like myself, where the company cares so little about meeting my needs that they don't even build processes to support customer inquiries through all channels. Now, a bit of Googling will unveil, okay, hey, maybe there was a bit of misdirection there, Ben, with the whole there's only one provider in the pet insurance market because, yeah, there are some other options. RACV or AMI, for example, they're not underwritten by PetSure. So maybe there is choice in the market after all. Hold up though. Who's the underwriter for RACV and AMI pet insurance? It's a company called Hollard Insurance, who are the underwriter for PetSure. In fact, there's only one other company within Australia offering pet insurance that isn't underwritten by these guys. and that's Pet Plan. Pet Plan are underwritten by Allianz. Now, Pet Plan are a company who in 2016 were basically told by the Australian Securities and Investments Commission that they had to refund a whole heap of money to consumers due to blatant, misleading advertising. See, they claimed at the time in their promotions that they were the only provider who paid out 100% of vet bills, which was true. However, they failed to mention that when your pet turns 8 years old, this goes down to 80%, from 10 years old goes down to 65%. So right when your pet is entering a span of their life that brings most health issues, and with those larger bills, the owner is stuck with at least 35% of the bills due to being suckered in on the claim of 100%. Now, it could be really easy to blame this on the consumer, and the fact that there was probably a hidden detail in the terms and conditions somewhere, and it's the consumer's fault for not looking properly. But it could really have been any of us. Research company Strategic Insights, formerly known as Plan for Life, found that most people taking out pet insurance are doing so for the first time, and that the exclusions and fine print are objectively more complex and hidden than for human insurance. And how many everyday Australians have the veterinary knowledge to understand all those terms and conditions? See, as a consumer, you have to be able to place a certain amount of trust in the product and the advertising that you're seeing without having to pull out a microscope or hire an expert. Now, on that note, let's turn the focus back to PetSure. They're pretty much a monopoly at this stage, let's face it. Because reviewing and comparing complexities and policies can be a task, so I'm only going to focus on one company, the one that I decided to go with for Peanuts cover. However, Consumer Advocate Group Choice did, however, go through and compare policies that they found. And this one company actually came out ahead, the company that I went with, and that company is Bupa. So let's have a look, shall we? First of all, we thought we'd get the ultimate cover for a range of inclusions and breadth of cover. Once we did, Peanut not only had the usual things like vaccinations and desexing, but she also ended up having an issue with her teeth, where her baby teeth needed to be pulled out because they didn't fall out on their own, and her adult teeth started coming down around them. It had the potential to be pretty serious if we didn't do something. So of course, we said, yeah, do the surgery. It costs hundreds of dollars, all in all, but that's okay, right? Because we have pet insurance. We thought so too. But as it turns out, all our claims were rejected. The basic pet ones were rejected in part because we didn't hit the excess, so had to pay them in full. They weren't expensive enough, in other words. Which is not ideal, but yep, fine. Then the others, they made us do some running around, including telling us that there were gaps in Peanut's medical history, even though we'd supplied the vet's transcripts for them. What gaps in her medical history? We asked them. Well, there's nothing for the first 8 weeks she was born. Now, new puppies ordinarily can't leave their mother for the first 8 weeks of their life. So why on earth was a pet insurer, a business who should know, they should understand and see that every day, why were they telling us that the time before we got Peanut was essentially unaccounted for? Do they not understand that humans don't give birth to animals? You don't go to claim your warranty on your brand new car and have them say, hang on a minute, that time that this car spent in the factory on the showroom floor is a bit of a grey area, so can you prove you owned it during that time? Anyway, we jumped through the hoops, is what I'm trying to say here. And even doing so, the bills that accumulated upwards of $500 were rejected because dental wasn't included. Now, I'm sure Pet Plan will be glad to hear this, but probably not the least bit surprised to know that they're not the only pet insurer to be deceptive. See, in calling the call centre, the pet insurer agent acting on Bupa's behalf explained that dental was an add-on. You had to nominate that you wanted to include it and pay extra for it. Disputing this, I pointed out that their site at the time had that dental was included, or it made it look like that dental was included. When we looked at other products like general care, which was specified as add-ons, dental didn't specifically specify that it was add-on. I made the point that I got the plan under the impression that dental was included, and that if I had had dental, my claim would have been approved. I thought I had them, but it didn't make a difference because, as they pointed out, there's a 6-month waiting period before you can even get the benefits of dental. Once it does kick in, after those 6 months are up, you're only covered for up to $500 dental. And guess how much it costs per year? Actually, don't guess. This is my rant, let me tell you, it's $500. Literally the maximum amount you can get back is the same as what you pay. And there are restrictions as well on how much you can claim at once within specified portions of time. So what do you actually gain from getting the dental add-on with Bupa? Not as much as Bupa gain, that's for sure. You get the perception of value. They aren't actually providing any benefit to you, but if they hide it away as an add-on amongst a whole stack of other benefits, you think, ooh, dental, that's nice. When really, it's a bit like getting a rattlesnake in a lucky dip. So how could this all have played out differently? Well, it all comes down to advertising. They've now updated their site to reflect the fact that dental is, in fact, an add-on. But it doesn't change that perception of value. Yes, there is a certain amount of onus placed on the consumer, but the greater onus needs to be placed on the company because there is no other way to describe smoke and mirrors like this than deceptive. They pull the wool over the consumer's eyes because they can get away with it. I mentioned to them that I would go to the ombudsman, the magic word for any call centre if you're stuck. Coming from someone who used to work in a call centre, and they offered a one-off $70 rebate. Now, because they've done that, I technically can't go to the ombudsman anymore because they've offered me a reasonable solution. And that means they can keep getting away with things like this and just slapping a little band-aid over it. And while there are likely legal implications for things like misleadingly presenting extras as inclusions, the perception of value is a lot less clear-cut. When it comes to charging $500 for something that they provide $500 of value, it's more of a question of whether it's morally the right thing to do to customers. And if you look through the various plans that are out there, even extending to health insurance for humans, you see things like little disclaimers stating that lifetime limits of $2,000, rendering the $700 per year of cover useless, or limits on the amount that can be reimbursed in one claim, meaning that the actual value that a customer might find is nowhere near the number that they advertise to you that you can claim back. And these are all the interesting little things that are coming to light with the Royal Commission into the finance sector. Obviously, insurance is part of that. Things like the fact that customers who had actual heart attacks had their claims rejected because the definition of a heart attack in their cover was so different from the very medical definition of a heart attack. How do you end up with a different version of a heart attack to a doctor? Yeah, look, doc, I know you went to medical school for 7 years, but it just comes down to the vibe of the thing. As consumers, we're really held with our backs against the wall with this one. So the future needs to be about insurance companies being more visible about the specific terms of their policies. And yes, they can state things to shut us up for a little while and tell us it's a long road because things like pet insurance are difficult to understand at the best of times. But see, there are things that they can do right now. We can hold them to account for. For example, for a start, they can advertise properly with their thresholds and limits on display. At the very least, they could make their finer product details available much earlier than hidden in the complex quote order processes for some of them. Well, they could abandon that quote process completely. The majority of prices are displayed up front. Why is there a need to put the customer through this quote process rather than to fan the smoke in the mirrors? The deception is littered everywhere, particularly when companies on selling it keep the product at arm's length. It makes me think, if Bupa came out number one in Choice's independent study for pet insurance, how bad are the others? And see, the one underwriter spread across so many sellers, that doesn't help things either. It does, in a sense, generate competition, which is a good thing. And where there is a product differentiation, that makes sense. But like we saw, there isn't a whole lot of differentiation being offered here. So when it's essentially the same company at the core of every product, can we really expect anything else? So in some cases, the only way that these companies can stand out is by presenting versions of the truth and hiding the full picture. If the customer was cared about, then the amount of providers on selling it would be severely restricted. At the very least, throwing confetti over the industry rather than laying it in concrete. That way, the on-sellers wouldn't have to turn to underhanded tactics so much to attract business. This would also spur on competition because it allows space for others to enter the market. It would allow the space for insurance companies to properly diversify and build products that consumers need, their own products, rather than just sell to them what's going. But see, consumers clearly aren't the end game here. It's money. More contracts with resellers means more money. And there are probably sales quotas with those contracts too. So the hard yards of the hard sell is done for them. And the resellers, they have a complete product line and operations, including a call center, to do their work for them too. They get to hang a Hungry Jack sign on a Macca's and call a quarter pounder a Whopper. It's a win-win for everyone except the consumer. So it's easy to see why the Finance Royal Commission here in Australia didn't solely focus on banks, but also went into grilling the insurance companies. And if there's any repercussions for insurance, like there have been for the banks, it can only be a good thing. Hopefully it means that they're held to account for dodgy behaviours. The thing is though, although round 6 of hearings for the Royal Commission did hear from insurance companies, the focuses were on general insurance and life insurance. So pet insurance escaped scot-free. And even if pet insurance was included, would they call the company underneath governing the monopoly? Or would they call the face who slapped on their branding and tried to hide the terms? Either way, it's not an easy situation to change, or one that will shift anytime soon, because consumers aren't important to these companies. Convenience is, and money is, and that's the way that it's been since the late 90s. Insurance is important, I'm not denying that fact at all. Not all of us can fork out tens of thousands of dollars of vet bills if the need arises. And yes, experiences differ based on need. But it's important for us to look for things in our policies that don't make sense and to ask questions about inclusions, like how much do I get versus how much am I paying? It's important for us to highlight the things that are deceptive and work to change legislation around that governance. So with our recent puppy puddles, we didn't go with Bupa, and we went with the basic cover because we couldn't justify the extras. We all need to think more about whether paying more for premium coverage actually gets us more. And by the way, I'm still waiting for my rebate.